One. Okay, we are now going.
This is Two Birds 2023. This is a new year with new topics and hot new guests. This year we will be featuring Gautam Yegapan and Mylan Kemp as hosts of this podcast. Tune in.
Every week. We will be recording every week. 2023 will be the year. We are not missing a single week.
For the future versions of us who listen to this, at least every month, for sure. We can do that 100%.
We were talking about just peeping in on the last time we recorded a New Year's, which was last year. It was cute. We were cute. It was a cute little conversation. It started with, I was like, yeah, I'm looking at the bottom right of my computer and it's crazy that it says 2022.
I remember, I did hear that part.
And we talked about how difficult 2021 was, and you're like, 2022 just has a different feel already. I was like, yeah, it does. It does, and it did. Honestly, 2021 was a tough year. Like, even just listening to that, I was like, yeah, 2021 was tough. 2022 much better. Now we'll see what 2023 holds.
I got clapped by 2022. Like, but
no, 2021 was a major clapper. No,
2021 was weird because it was a weird year because, and I remember talking about this in the last podcast. Like, it had all the elements. Like, it really did have every single element that it needed to be a good. Like, I traveled more that year than I think I ever have. Like, I was like every month in a different place. And I was so miserable every single place I was in. It was crazy. And I really feel like one of the big reasons that I felt that way was because I was on antidepressants at the time. And as I've learned about antidepressants now is that you cannot numb the bad without also numbing the good. And so no matter where I was just always so indifferent. I was always so unconscious, and I felt disconnected from everyone around me. I felt disconnected from the environment around me, and I felt disconnected from myself. So I don't know what I was actually connected to at all, other than this relationship with numbness. And so that year just felt like a blur. I felt like a zombie. And then at the end of that year, I got off the antidepressants and just got clapped by breaking up with Bree, getting off antidepressants, and then I feel like that's when my pretty bad drinking habit kicked in. But for 2022, man, it was a better year in the sense of like I was actually alive. Like, I actually felt like I was there experiencing everything. Like, that was the scary part about 2021, was just like I didn't feel like I was there. Like, I felt just like didn't feel like a real year. And 2022 was real as shit. And I think it was the equivalent of like, I don't know, like, like Mr. Miyagi or whatever, the guy from fucking Karate Kid, just like kicking your ass, but like giving you a lesson after each one. And like, oh man, did he fucking hit me with the hook, the spinning fucking flying kick to the neck? Like, I got my ass beat, bro. Like, wow. But I feel like I learned more in 2022 than I had in a cool minute. And I feel like the Mylan that came out on the other side is he's up to no good.
It is cool to like look back at a whole year and be like, what are the things that happened? And I think it's cool to compare it with other people as well to see if there was some sort of global similarities, or at least like societal similarities, if not at the level of the entire globe. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I do think like the narrative of COVID has a certain it shares a lot of experiences for many people. We were talking about it last episode, but I just wanted to 2020 being the year where it first started, but people were still kind of hopeful. 2021 being like, all right, well, this is just our new norm now. We're just on lockdown. We're all wearing masks. 2022 being the year where it was like kind of like a comeback. And I'm curious to see what 2023 will be like, where now it feels like we're kind of on the other side. And now we get to actually possibly reap the benefits of an event like that happening, such as having remote work, such as having, for some people, the hybrid option. I think possibly this year could And we've probably learned a lot of lessons from COVID, and perhaps this will be the year where we actually implement those.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's always hard to think about. I somehow forget, honestly, that we were in a whole ass pandemic. Like the world was shut down. Like 2021, like a good amount of
yes.
it. Like you couldn't, one, go anywhere without a mask, and two, like everything was just so restricted and uncomfortable. Like it's hard to capture the anxiety that you felt in every space, the tension that you felt every time you coughed or had a sneeze. And so that, I imagine, played a really, really big role in a lot of the kind of unease of 2021 as well. Something I was thinking about that I think I really want to define how I live my life this year was, I was thinking about, just based off of my really shitty memory, what did I actually remember from 2022? Like, what do I look, because I did, there's all these days and then there's all these weeks that are just mixed in. And I don't know what the value of these days are, but ideally, these days have some value that projects forward into the future. And either because that day itself was so valuable that it's memorable, or because something from that day lended future Mylan something. And so, like, I feel like you and I, what we have in common is we try to live our life such that what we're doing today always lends future Gautam and Mylan something. Uh, we're always trying to be an ally to those future selves. Um, and so I was thinking about my year, and I was like, well, what do I remember? Because I spent literally from January to July, I think I was straight unconscious and drinking and doing God knows what, hooking up with girls, drinking constantly, out and about every multiple times a week, doing any drug I could get my hands on, and spent most of it unconscious. And then the second half of the year is when I stopped drinking and became way more conscious. But I look at it and I'm like, um, I don't remember any time I went out and drank. I don't remember any time I was in the club. I don't remember any time I was at some random event doing whatever. I remember the times I traveled. I remember the really, really meaningful conversations I had with the people I cared about. And I remember a lot of the hikes and time I spent in nature. These are the things that I feel like I feel connected to now. And so in the future, I want to live my life doing more of those things, because those are the things that I clearly hang on to and care about. I don't care about the drinking. I don't care about the being at the clubs. I don't care about the random hookups with the girls. What I care about are these things that are actually more in line with my values. And I don't want to look back on a year and say what happened. I want to look back on a year and have a year that was filled with things that made me feel connected to myself.
hmm. Connected. So would you say that that feeling of connectedness is kind of what you're thriving for, striving for?
Connectedness and alignment. I think that, you know, it's there has to be some reason that going to the club was not memorable, because I would say in those moments it felt like I was having fun. It felt like I was alive. It felt like the night was so important. Come on, bro, you got to come out. Like, come on, everyone's going out. Like, in those times, it feels like such a big deal. Like, it's like, oh my god, like if I don't go tonight, like I'm gonna miss out on something huge. And like I feel like that I'm gonna miss out is what drives so much of us to do these things, to put ourselves in these situations. That FOMO of, I'm gonna miss out on something big. And being the guy who never missed out because I was always being there, I look back and I'm like, there was nothing that I actually encountered in going out on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, going out on the Wednesdays, that was so worth going that it actually stuck with me. So whatever
Hmm.
it was that I was going to miss out on is equivalent to if I went, because I don't actually remember either. And that's not to say that going didn't like add something. Like, I'm sure it did to some extent, but maybe staying would have added something as well. And so
Hmm.
that's all to say that all those times where I was just like, no, come on, okay, this is gonna be the night, bro. Like, we're about to go crazy. Like, And even those nights when I came home and I was like, yo, this was such a lit night. I'm so glad I went out. I still don't remember it. But that time where I was out and I went on a hike at some, really beautiful trail and had just really like spoke with myself, felt connected to myself, looked at a flower, looked at a bird. I somehow remember those things. And
Hmm.
so that clearly tells me something about myself. It tells me about what really mattered to me. It tells me about what did I actually feel connected to? What did I feel aligned with that's
Did
going
you
to hang
forget the
on with me?
Caribbean night though?
Never that.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, when I traveled, like the times when I traveled, like, yeah, I remember that.
yeah.
Every time I traveled, I that to me was memorable. Even when I was getting lit, like to be honest, like, I was out
Hmm.
in, Phoenix or whatever, like those times, those honestly times were very memorable. So something about traveling and like, getting, going out to clubs and stuff like that is fun. But I think something about being at home and in my city and doing it is not really memorable. So for me, it's just about this year's, I think I would say the year of alignment and the year of action. What about you?
Hmm.
Do you feel like what are some like things that you feel like you really remember from last year doing? Like even if you track back to January, February, like what's actually stuck with you? And what are some things that you thought might have stuck with you, but that really haven't?
The one, I think my answer is biased because I just got home and I have all my Polaroids at home, and I kind of,
Mm,
every time I come home, I put them away. So I look through them
mm,
once or twice. And so it's hard to tell if I wasn't reminded by anything what I would remember. But
mm.
even that, I mean, that's not, but yeah, that did really help spark a lot of my memory. But I would say
But
the
were there
things
a
that
lot of things that you were like, oh, I forgot about this? Like when you looked at it, and what were some things you looked at and you were like, oh no, I remember this.
it's not that I forgot about it, because as soon as I saw the picture, so many details came to mind. I feel like there's something spiritual about literally looking at the people you're about to take that Polaroid with, clicking that button that just puts it imprinted so hard in your mind. So every time I saw it, it wasn't like, oh, I forgot that this had happened. It like immediately transported me into that moment as if I was there again. And every picture represented that, like that person who took that picture out and took it. Um, but now that you were saying, and I think it's a really beautiful question of like, what is it that you actually remember from the year? For people, especially who don't have great memories, I think like anything that made me feel something, really, which is
Mm,
why, even as you were talking about clubbing, I look back, I don't go out a lot, but every time I go out, it's really, really memorable for me just because I don't dance often. So when I do, there's just something in my brain that's like, I remember that day very, very clearly. And often, even if it's like welfare, for example, was not a fun night, but I feel like the fact that I felt something at which was kind of annoyance and disgust, but I felt that with a friend as well, really like helped kind of imprint that experience in my mind of like, this is what I expected from the night, and I was so disappointed. And that I felt something strongly. And I feel like when I
mm,
look back on 2022, I think of all the times that I felt really strongly to the people I met, or to events that I was either situations and environments that I was either starting or leaving. I felt a lot of loss this year, and I also felt a lot of gain and excitement. So all the events that I think extracted that feeling, starting from when we went to prom to, like back then, like
mm,
that was something I looked forward to meeting, Kamiko, whatever, like meeting those people, getting heartbroken, traveling through Europe, the Vipassana, just like there were so many things that I looked forward to, experienced, and it really learned a lot from, and then felt the loss of something ending. And so that cycle, I think, repeated at least 500 times in 2022. And
mm,
so that for me, that was kind of what 2022 looked like. It was very much just feeling the cycle of desire, attainment, and then loss. And it was just that cycle. And so for everything, I feel like every time I had that entire cycle happen, I feel like that experience kind of imprinted itself on my brain.
mm.
So
It's crazy to think about that 2024 Gautam and Mylan are going to be listening to this and be like completely different spaces and be
so
like,
different.
what were we talking about in 2023, bro? That was so fucking long ago. That's so crazy. We were
Yeah.
such kids. Like all of those things are gonna come out of our mouth. We were so naive. Like it was so crazy. Like um that was before I was a millionaire. Wow. Um if you had to say two really defining moments of last year for you. What were they, and what do you feel like you learned from them?
So I'm curious to think. So what when we say defining, what do you for when you answer this question, what does it mean defining for you?
I would say defining, when I ask this in this particular context, I think means um, it shaped your identity in a way that most experiences don't. It informed your identity in a way that most experiences don't. Say you're going on one path, in life. It was very clear that the course sort of hit a turn. It sort of hit a slight
Mm,
left or a slight right, or even a reverse. But that who Gautam was after that experience was either different, or you knew would become different. And I know what your answer probably might be is like, oh, everything I experience like changes me. But what they, to that extent, probably all have a different degree of intensity. And so
yeah,
what were some events that the intensity you were just like, yo, like this is gonna be different after this?
intense. I mean, off bat, I
Kamiko?
definitely no, not even close. I feel like out of no, I feel like just the number of events that happened this year that kicked me off my life path were a lot. And for sure, not Kamiko, but the whole Arden
I
situation for sure. Like I feel like
wonder if she listens to these.
the entire roller coaster with Arden, I think
Mm,
definitely that booted me off my life path hard. Like, and the
mm.
crazy thing is I met Arden at the end of December of 2021. Our whole
Shut the
friendship and
fuck up. No, you
relationship,
didn't.
yes, our whole friendship and relationship lasted less than a year. And it was like, wow. I was like, I
No
cannot
way.
believe,
Really?
yes, which is insane.
What?
Yeah, like every time I
Crazy.
think about that, I'm like, we experienced so much together and a lot of like
Wow.
very strong, intimate things in less than a year, which is nuts.
Wow.
Um, and so definitely my friendship with her, I would say, booted me off my life path hard in the best ways possible. And let me think about the second one, but I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. I
Well,
need to
I'm,
think a
I'm,
little.
well, just to kind of tack on to that a little bit, what are some things that you feel like that experience or culmination of
Man,
experiences
everything,
gave you?
man. Just my friend was talking about this a couple of days ago of like there's a political term for it, but basically once something extreme happens, it allows for a whole bunch of other possibilities to become normalized. So
Mm,
Trump becoming president allows for a whole bunch of like other ideologies to become something that's like accepted to say. In a
mm,
similar way, meeting people and seeing people do things that you just did not think were possible really does that to your brain as well. And I think
mm,
Arden completely shaped my mind of what is possible in terms of courage, in terms of the ability to do things alone. She made me
mm,
rethink the entire concept of like you not needing people to go travel. You don't need to
mm,
wait for people. You want to go see something, go see something. And when you're there, you can go make friends. There were so many times I told her, "Hey, like I'm really afraid of this." And she would tell me, "Fear is good. It means it's a sign you should go do it."
mm,
Like just think small things like that that she would say throughout our friendship that made me, especially how she relates with other people, which I learned figured out eventually. That part hurts, like, but it's beautiful when you're the person doing all that relating. So but
a lot of love to give.
a lot of love to give, a lot of attention and care to give, which was really cool. And so I feel like she just motivated me and made me realize it's possible to do that and still take care of yourself to a certain extent.
Mm,
And so her ability to express herself freely it was cool. And so, and then on the second half, so that's what I learned from just watching her. But in terms of like what she made me feel, I haven't felt that type of feeling of like genuine affection and admiration and care for a person since I'm not allowed to say her name anymore, the other girl. And so
we'll get flagged.
she got heated last time I tried, but last time I did. But okay, so the other
Uh,
woman. And so um I'm afraid of her. All right, and so okay, so I totally forgot what that felt like, to like to really, really, really kind of put someone else before you. And I think once you do that to one person, though, you remember and you start doing it to everyone a little more. And I think that's a
Mm,
cool thing about feeling love. It's like once you love one person, you now have a bar to now love the other people in your life.
mhm,
When you lose that person, your bar for love is just going to be replicated by whoever you love the most.
mm,
And so if that's somebody just and so that's one of the most beautiful things to me about love. I feel like whenever I really love someone, I love everyone in my life more. And
mm,
so I'm really glad I was able to feel those things. And on top of that, thanks for letting me talk, by the way. But on top of that, the other thing I really feel like was beneficial of that entire situation was when it did end, instead of channeling all that heartbreak for the first time into dating apps and into other women and other people, I channeled it creatively. And I feel like
mm,
that has fundamentally shaped my life to this from these last 3 months of like how I view creation. And I have been in my bag when it comes to this. And I feel like it's now radiating in other places in my life as well. So even as I'm writing out these ideas for how to incorporate tech into education, which is like the next thing I'm focusing on, my ideas are just so much more clear because I'm like, I've been in a space of creativity. And so it's
mm.
easier to let that channel into all the other areas of my life. And so that all came from that heartbreak. So I definitely feel like that entire situation I dealt with her, learning about her, under putting myself in her shoes, learning about her life, and then, not receiving that same form of care and affection. I think, yeah, it was a beautiful experience, and I'm glad I was able to experience it. So that
That
was
is
definitely
beautiful.
one
Yeah,
of
yeah, no, that's
2022.
definitely been a yeah. I feel like that's been a very defining one for sure. I feel like that situation from the beginning. I mean, I remember you when you first met Arden. I mean, just you talking about how kind of amazing her experiences were, and sort of like just how much you learned from her, and just sort of like I remember you were really just kind of enamored by her energy and sort of what how you felt when you were with this person, and just how much you were like learning. Like I feel like I got to see indirectly how much that relationship changed and affected you. And I feel like it is crazy to think that that has even passed on into me. Like, I think much of what you've learned from that relationship, you've brought into this relationship. And, I've got to think more about, traveling and connection and whatever from that. And so it's just crazy how we all are just so connected to each other, and how like one person impacting your life, like Arden's probably had a huge fucking impact on my life that I can't even calculate. Like, it's just so crazy.
Quick
um
shout out to Nico. Just throw that out there. Hey, big Nico, dog, you are the man.
oh no, oh no.
And now all these beautiful South African men.
Oh
Shout out.
no, starting 2023 triggered.
All right,
Oh
your
man,
turn.
heartbreaks and prom dates.
Actually, you could use that for this one too. She came.
uh, heartbreaks and cabin dates.
Oh, bro.
Oh
It's too
no.
soon, bro. I can't even think about that. Every time I think about that day, I'm just so triggered. I'm
Oh
like,
man.
wow, I did not know my brain was capable of. I think my brain registered that as trauma for sure. Like
I
actually,
think
like
I think so. I think so,
I
honestly.
literally
That's
okay, just the last thing, dude. I was staying with this Colombian guy, and he had all his friends over one day, and they had a campfire, and they're just like playing all their instruments. I literally, they invited me out there. I went and sat with them. The second I sat in front of that campfire, I literally got triggered so hard. I was like, oh my God. The last time I sat in front of a campfire, I was literally, my brain was tweaking. I was like, I've never tweaked that hard before. And I was like, oh.
yeah,
But whew,
I think that's called trauma.
yeah,
I think that's what it is. That's called PTSD. That's what the trigger warning is all about, right? That
every
is
time there's a
crazy though.
fire, every time there's a campfire,
Yeah.
they're like trigger warning. But yeah.
This may be harmful to some people's mental health. Please be careful when you sit around fires. Dude,
My
that is
God.
crazy though. And like, man, it's something I've been thinking about looking through the pictures. I found a Google Doc with a bunch of pictures from 2015 2015 and 2000, from like 2014 to 2017. And it was all my friends from those time periods, and it was even me in high school. Was like I had like a bunch of pictures of my last day of high school and all the pictures I took with my friends, and then the people who kind of were important in my life throughout the years. And it was just so wild. And I was just thinking about love and loss in such a different way looking back, because so many people I was looking at, like I'm next to them, I'm holding them, big smile on my face, they have a big smile on their face. And at that time, for that moment, for that particular space, those people mean so much to me. They're so, and each person I was looking at, like that's such a huge impact. Like even my relationship with Gonzo, like, you know, like looking at those years, like we were so close. Like that was my best friend. Another one of my really close friends, his name was Ori. Like, you know, I grew up with this guy. Like he was my little brother. Literally probably the closest thing I've had to, I mean, I have literally Dylan, but at that time, like the closest thing I had to little brother that I felt really connected to. And um still a baby at this point in time. So it was more like felt more like my son. But I and then I have pictures with my boy Jamie, who I grew up with since third grade. And I, this 3 year period, those were my boys, Jamie, Ori, and Gonzo. And we were kicking it every other weekend and we're going and doing things together. And like I was already in my head, like these are gonna be the men that are gonna be my you know, best men at my wedding. You know, these are gonna be my dogs for life. Like these are gonna be the people I'm rolling with. And I'm not close to any of them anymore. I don't talk to Jamie at all. I haven't talked to Ori in years. And Gonzo and I barely exchange messages every now and then. And a lot of times there's this weird tension between us. So um a lot of these relationships I think have fallen. And I feel like I used, oh, and even Karan, my homie Karan, even like, let's say when I got in college, we were so close. And I learned so much from every one of these people. And they offered me such a beautiful piece of connection and love and affection in that moment, and made me feel like the world was a good place. It made me feel loved and cared for and held. And they're not in my life anymore. And then I look at newer pictures of people like you, of people like, let's say, even Jay and Bree, um, Tauntaun, people who have insanely impacted my life now that I can't even imagine not being close to. And it's just crazy to think that like that's the cycle of love and loss. And it's the cycle of birth and death that is reflected in everything we do. It's a reflecting every place we are, this cycle of birth and death. And I feel like in the past, I wanted to really hold on to all of these relationships and wanted to hold on to all of this love, but it's just really amazing to realize that there's someone next year I'll probably meet that will I'll look back on and be like, I can't imagine my life without this person. And there's someone in 5 years that I'll look back and be like, I can't imagine my life without this person. And they're gonna just offer me so much, and it's just so beautiful. And there's people I'm close to now that I probably won't be talking to anymore. Hopefully not you. Hopefully Two Birds is still alive. But you know, at the end of the day, like I'm open to the possibility that any relationship can live its natural death. And maybe some relationships will have a rebirth, and that would be beautiful as well. But it just has really taught me that each relationship really has its place in your life, and it really has its time when it's time to go. And you are wise to let go of that with love and not anger and resentment, and not trying to bring back something that's ultimately dead.
I think that's probably like the wisest 2 minutes that's like ever come out. I was like, wow, that is so beautiful and something that I need to remind myself more. This idea that when having this gauge of when things should be let go. I think it's hilarious because I think this concept of having someone as your best man or as your groomsman, or it's something that's been there since like a little kid, and it's something that's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
ingrained in the society as if that's like the ultimate form of a friend. Like
right.
I've had Ellis say this to me like randomly in a conversation. He's like, "Yeah, we're not really friends anymore, but you're definitely coming to my wedding." And I was like, "Dude," in my head at that moment, I was like, "I don't care. Like, I don't want to come to your like," and that's something I'm realizing now. I'm like, I don't place this value on weddings that I think a lot of people do. Like, if I'm not invited to
Mm-hmm.
someone's wedding, like that's totally fine. Like
Yeah,
I would much rather us be good friends
yeah.
and like keep in touch than me come to your wedding as some barometer of our friendship.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people, PK Sahib, they also said that too. They're like, oh, the next
Right,
time we're
right.
gonna see Gautam is at our wedding. Like
Mm.
it's something now that really represents this barometer of are we friends or not? But our actual closeness is not. Do you actually know what's going on in my life, dude? Do I know what's going on in yours? Like, do we see each other? Do we make each other priorities in our life twice a year to come visit or come see? Like, none of that stuff matters. But it's
Mm.
like, are you gonna be my? Are you gonna show up at my wedding
Right, right,
matters?
right.
Like, it's it's quite odd. And even as you talked about this natural progression of death, I'm thinking of two people in my life that I think I'm overdoing it. Because of the inability to recognize that the end of something also can be beautiful. The end of something can
Mm.
actually be a testament to the beauty of the thing itself. It doesn't
Mm.
mean that, oh, it was so bad, therefore it must end. It was that it was so beautiful that by ending it, we can preserve it for what it was.
Mm.
Like ending it actually is a respectful thing of that. I never thought about it like that though. Like,
Well, you know what I think about when it comes to endings? Like, I've probably mentioned this before, but it's real. But to try to prioritize, to try to not allow something to live its natural death and to try to replicate it beyond its uh, designed end time is cancer. Like, it's literally what cancer is. Like, cancer is like a cell apoptosis, right? Like, it's supposed to die. It has its programmed death. And it's like, no, bitch, I'm going to replicate and keep going. And like, I'm not going to die. And what happens is that by trying to extend beyond the time that it was allotted, it ends up destroying itself and the host. And it's ultimately it's a suicide. It's a cancer. Like, I feel like that's the definition of cancer, is trying to extend something beyond its nat. And that's not to say like when something's like kind of given out life, it's like, oh, like, just let everything go the second it's not working anymore. But it's to say that when you really have put in that effort, you really have extended yourself to an extent, and you recognize that you just don't click with someone anymore, that something is really just not serving you, or that you're a really different person, and they're a really different person. And the only reason you guys are hanging out is because you have some weird, I owe you because I've known you for so long. Some weird like sunken cost fallacy of like, I can't let this relationship go because we've known each other for years. Like, that shit doesn't matter. Like, I really used to value relationships based off of length. Like, I've known you for 5 years. That means something. I've known this person for 6 years. They have seniority over you because I've known you for like, that shit does not matter. Like, if I've known you for 10 years and like we don't fucking talk anymore, we don't connect, we're not the same person. I've known this person for a year and I feel like super connected to them. Like I'm
yeah.
valuing this relationship. Like, this relationship means more to me. Like, it's not to say what everything you've done is washed away, but it's to say that like the past is the past. Like, I'm not that person anymore. Neither are you. Like, I'm. It's hard for me to, and I don't know why we put so much value on dead versions of ourselves, thoughts and feelings.
Mm, well said.
But that's
I
that's huge, man. I so say one last thing about that particular thing. I just literally let go of a friendship with Jay. And that friendship served me so much this year. It served me so much. Like, you know, I love that guy. I always will love that guy. He's a just, interesting and lovable dude. But it was really difficult for me because I've spent so much of my life hanging on to things that I should have let go. And I feel like it was really defining for me because it represented me no longer tolerating things that are not serving me, and no longer being afraid of death, because everything you do is a practice for death, right? And so you can practice death a bunch of times in your life to be prepared for when it comes. And letting things go is a practice of death, really. And so, because you're gonna have to eventually let go, and it's not gonna be the perfect time. It's not gonna be whatever, like, but it's gonna be a time where you have to do it. And so, letting that go, I think, was really difficult, but ultimately, I think taught me a lot about what I mean to myself. So, let go of them friendships in 2023 if they're not serving you. Let go
it's
of
beautiful.
anything that's not serving you.
I think like that was actually one of the biggest lessons of 2022 for me. I think in general, the learning of letting go. And one thing
Mm-hmm.
I found to be very helpful is like living for 3 months with everything I own in my backpack. There was something that
Mm-hmm.
was so beautiful about that because it was like I let go of all the excess. I come back to the States. I'm like, anything that doesn't fit in that backpack, I now know I do not need for survival. Like
Mm,
I have more than enough what I need. And I actually had more than what I needed in that backpack. And so like now all
that's
this other
crazy.
stuff I have, which everything I own now fits in my trunk of my car, I know most of that is extra stuff. Like
Mm,
obviously I need more space because now I have a tent and all these other things. But in terms of let you start to realize once you let go of all these even parts of your identity that you think are you. I think the Vipassana meditation helped me let go of a lot of conceptions of who I was. Oh, I am this person who is this, who is this, who is this. No, that's just who I present myself to be, but that's not who I
mm-hmm,
am. I can go to a new environment and change if I had to. And in
mm,
the same way, I just think that clothing, friendships, relation, all of these things, like what you said, is when they do start to feel heavy, they can be let go because they're not intrinsic to who you are. And so that something I want to strive as I get older and older is this feeling of feeling light, feeling like I'm
mm,
capable of taking on any form or identity when it needs to be. And I think by
mm,
that, you allow yourself to navigate so many more spaces that you wouldn't if you took on a certain role. If you were like, I am a smart person, you automatically cut off yourself to many environments in where it would be beneficial for you to not be the smart person there. And so, just in that sense, I think I'm trying to let go of like, oh, I am manly or I am what, because it's like I don't have to be, I can take on the role of those things if I have to, but also it's beneficial to be able to let go and be like, I don't, it doesn't benefit me to take on that role in this environment. Therefore, I will now be someone else. But then there
mm,
are things that you can choose to be intrinsic to you. And I think the less and less that is, the more spaces you can navigate, which to me, I guess one of the virtues to me is freedom. And so something I really value is the ability to navigate any space, any culture, any environment. And to do that, I have to be able to take on more roles than just one role of Gautam, you know?
mm. I feel like connections can become chains and perspectives can become prisons if you hang on to them beyond their expiration date. And
Mm,
it reminds me of what you're saying right now literally reminds I saw this clip the other day and I was like, oh shit. But do you remember um I feel like most of my life is based off of Avatar The Last Airbender and Korra.
yeah.
But you saw Korra, right?
I only the first season.
Well, there's this villain. I don't remember his. Oh, if you could even call him a villain. I don't remember what season he's in, but his name's Zahir, and he's
Mm-hmm.
this like this dude who's like trying to like he's like really he's like I think he's like the equivalent of like a Buddhist, I guess, in it. And he's really into like ancient whatever. But there's like this really rare airbender who like could fly, and like he's like trying to like gain that. So, anyways, there's a scene where everyone's got him cornered, and he's like on this cliff, and he just like he says this phrase. He's like, "Let go of your earthly attachments and become wind." And then he just falls
Mm,
off the cliff, and then he starts to fly. And even Aang, as woke as he was, as amazing as he was, could not fly because he was so attached to the earth. He was so attached to these things that
mm,
connected, kept him connected. And I think that's that moment when he was going to go in the thing and like let go of the attachments. Like I think he might have been able to do that, but he decided to stay attached. He decided um, to be chained to the earth. And I feel like Zahir really represents someone who lets go of these attachments fully at any moment and is able to fly freely through the wind. And I feel like that really, to me, reflects kind of what you're saying, which is like if you are too attached to your identity, if you're too attached to any one person, there's going to be opportunities where the wind is pulling you in a certain direction. And because you're not light enough, you're not going to be able to go that way. You're going to stay
mm.
stuck and then wonder why you're not moving.
Fire. So I guess this is the question then. How do we identify the expiration date?
I feel like I have gotten this is what I think about that. I think that this year, one of the things that I've really gotten in touch with, or in trying to get better in touch with, is mindfulness. I think that your body sends you, your brain and body, your conscious and your unconscious send you signals all the time about how you're feeling about things, how they're affecting you, whether or not they're good for you. And I feel like we've gotten really good at ignoring those signals. We've gotten really good at ignoring when our body doesn't want us to be in a certain place. We've gotten really good at numbing it through alcohol, different types of drugs, social media, even people. And we've gotten really good at ignoring it through these mediums. And I think that when you become really mindful and you start to validate the signals that your body and brain are sending you, and you don't want to over validate them either. I think it's a really interesting scale where it's like people are too used to numbing them. But I think someone who over validates them begins to treat their feelings and thoughts as God and the deciders of reality, and then kind of sort of pulls everyone into needing to revolve around their feelings and thoughts. So like there still needs to be a certain amount of like these things don't mean everything. But I think most people are too far on this scale where they're completely unaware. That's at least that's where I was all last year. I was all the signals that my brain and body were sending me that I didn't want to be somewhere, that I didn't want to do something, that I didn't enjoy a relationship. I was not paying attention to because I had some belief that I should be doing something instead of what I actually wanted to do. So I think that ultimately it comes from mindfulness, being able to come and check in with how your brain and body are feeling. And I think it'll tell you, like, I think your brain and body will literally tell you if you like or don't like something. I think you'll have a conversation with somebody. And if you're really mindful, you can feel after that you don't feel as good as you did before.
Mm.
You can go in a situation. And if you're really paying attention to how you feel all the time, you can tell that, oh, I feel a little bit heavier than I did before. There's a stronger tightness in my chest that I'm feeling after this situation. Oh, there's a lightness that I'm feeling after the situation. I feel more excited after I was in this environment. Uh, I felt more rested after I read versus when I watched TV. I felt more connected to the world when I didn't go on my phone for a day. I think not only is it mindfulness, but I think it's constant variability. I think you have to be doing a lot of things all the time to really be able to assess what your body does and doesn't like. I think a lot of times people get stuck in
Mm.
doing the same thing every day to where like that signal just goes off. But I think a lot of times if you put yourself in new environments, if you change up your habits, you're used to sleeping, waking up at 9 a.m. Okay, wake up at 5 a.m. See how you feel. Do that for a week. See how your body feels. Okay, you're used to drinking fucking Arrowhead water. Drink Dasani for a week and see how your body and brain feel after that. Okay, you're used to um, I don't know, having sex with the lights off, have it with the lights on and see how you feel after that. Like try a bunch of
Mm.
different things. Like always be turning the concrete, always be shifting the mold, and then
Mm.
always taking notes. Okay, this is how I feel after this. This is how I feel after that. And after you have enough variability, like you'll start to have like levels like, dude, I didn't feel as good when I did this versus all of these other things. And then you can start to really shift into building habits that are more in alignment with you. But you have to constantly be doing it because you're a being that's constantly changing. And you have to
Mm.
notice when, okay, it was really good for me to, I don't know, go out to this park every Wednesday for 6 months, but I'm not really enjoying it that much anymore. Maybe I'm different now. Maybe something else serves me. And so just always being in touch with how you're really feeling deep down. And then I think the third step, so I would say it's variability. I would say it's mindfulness. And I would say the third step is I think courage. I think it's a lot of having the courage to when you know that something is not serving you anymore. Because a lot of times we get that signal from our brain and body, but we are too scared to actually change it. We're too scared to cut that relationship. We're too scared to go to that place by ourselves and try those things out. We're too scared to do any of these things. And so I would say that I think these three elements are extremely important in terms of being in touch and actually creating profound differences from these signals of it's time to end this and it's time to have something else be born
Did you have those 3 points already in mind, or you just spit that out right now freestyle?
just now.
Hey, I think I'm gonna need you to be a life coach or something, bro. That's not light work. That was cool. Like the 3 point bullet is when you know you're becoming a good orator. You literally just broke down your entire concept into 3 points and then presented it to me. Like that was like, yeah, no, you need to start teaching something, I think. That was
It's not
impressive.
even
That's so impressive. That's very hard to do. I feel like if I wanted to get my ideas together and present it and then come up with 3 bullet points and like oh that was good. That was Andrew Huberman vibes right there. Good work. Good work.
oh
I
man,
know, I
and
know
this
you've been
this
listening to your
is
podcast. That's what's
let
going
me just
on.
say this is why I love this relationship because I feel like we really really reinforce and encourage each other we when we I guess present ourselves, whether it's oration, communication, ideas, whatever. I feel like we do a good job of being like, yo, like acknowledging, like, yo, that was fire. Like that, like other people you'll be talking to, and they're just like, it'll go over their head. But I feel like, there's something I really appreciate that about this relationship is we'll be like, yo, what the fuck? You just said that? Like off top? Like, oh shit. Like, all right, for sure. Like, cool. What time you been waking up? Like, shit, let me
Yeah.
get on that way too, Like, damn, all right. Like but
No, but that's those were really, really good points, man. Like learning how to let go of things is one half of it because that whole cycle that we were talking about, it's the birth and the death. And so
mhm,
understanding how to let things go is the death part of it, but then learning how to start new things is the birth part of it. And I think that that's the part that both sides take courage. And so perhaps like I don't I know that's a whole yin and yang. I'm not mindful enough to actually really pay attention to how everything around me is constantly changing and how there is the start of something every day and the end of something. And I think I've been forcefully adding that wisdom into my life by just changing my environment all the time. But you brought
mhm,
this up, a couple of days ago, talking about how, for example, in your environment, you've been kind of around the same people, similar spaces for quite a while. And so still finding that in that environment takes a different skill set than if you're manually just living in a different city every week. And if you're,
mhm,
then it's like obviously things are starting and ending. But the more subtle you can realize it, you can notice, the leaves falling. There's just so many small things every day that are starting and ending. And I think it's it's beautiful because I think at the end, what ends up speaking loudest to me is when everything begins and ends, why do anything?
mhm,
Because even if I don't do anything, something is starting and something is ending. And I think that's the next question for 2023 for me. In 2022, I got to experience more than I've ever experienced in my life. I got to experience all the feelings, all the people. And then I'm like, okay, well, now what? Uh, I felt it all. I've started a new thing. It ended. I developed the courage. I tried new things. I liked it. I enjoyed my life. But then now what? And I think
mhm,
answering that question after you've built maybe a decent cycle in your own life of observing the start and end of things, I think is the next step. How do you find
mhm,
the beauty in that process itself? Because at a global, at a much larger scale, that is what life is,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, I feel like when you think about the power of mindfulness, I think it's a superpower in some crazy extent, and that it ultimately gives you one really crazy ability, which is discernment. And that's why I'm like so obsessed with the idea of the Sharingan in Naruto, because it's an eye that you actually develop the ability to perceive reality more accurately. And
Hmm.
it's a really high cost. You have to age and you have to go through some really crazy shit for it to develop stronger. But when it comes to mindfulness, there's two different people. The person who's extremely mindful, one person can is walking on the beach and sees a collection of sand upon their feet. But the other person, if they're extremely mindful and spend enough time, they can differentiate each grain of sand is an individual piece of sand. I have this tree outside of my room, and um, sometimes I'll do a mindfulness meditation where I'll just literally sit and look at the different leaves for 20, 30 minutes. And when I look at this tree initially, I'm like, dude, all of these leaves are the same. Like, there's no way I could actually like look at a leaf and be like, okay, that's this leaf and that's the like. After 20 to 30 minutes, all of the leaves look so different that I am confused as to how I ever thought they looked the same.
Hmm.
And that's how your life is. That's how your feelings are. That's how every situation are like, oh, anger is just anger. Spend some time really looking at the anger. You'll notice all of the nuances. Oh, I'm just like, this is how I'm just really happy. Like, spend some time really looking at the happiness because there's a bunch of fragments of every accumulation of experiences and feelings and emotions that create it. And if you're just looking with a quick glaze over it, you're just going to see it as one thing. But the more you pay attention to it, the more you can notice the little pieces that create it, and the more you can notice how each little addition adds something beautiful or something that takes away from the experience the feeling, whatever. So I would say that's one thing in just the power of mindfulness that I think is extremely fucking important. Um, but another thing I think about is that, you said, well, I kind of did all these things, but what's the point of doing something versus not doing something if change happens anyways? And I feel like from my perspective, I lived my life a lot this year not being the generator of the change. I lived my life by law of accident. Whatever came, I just accepted. And I think the power in doing something yourself versus not doing something is that you get to experience yourself as someone who is exhibiting the highest extent of free will that they can. I don't know whether or not there is, but you get to be the decider. You give yourself the best chance to be the decider of how your life goes. You get to be the best. You give yourself the best chance of getting to experience the freedom of what it means to be a person. Something happens and you say, "Oh, I did that." You don't look back and you're like, "Well, life just kind of fucked me," like I don't know. Like you look back and you're like, "I was the one who decided that my life was going to move this way." And I think that you get this power to ultimately whatever goal it is that you're searching for, you give yourself the power to reach it at an extent that someone else would be hoping and praying for it. You say, "No, I'm going there. I know I can go there." Like something I think about with you a lot, particularly, is I feel like I feel like I learned this from you is that a lot of the times I feel like I'm in situations and I'm either waiting for something to happen or I go into it and I'm like, I hope it's going to be a fun time, or like, ah, man, like, yeah, I hope I can get this. But I feel like you're someone who's like, no, I'm going to go there and I'm going to make it a fun time. I'm going to go there and like, I'm going to get this out of it. It's like you put a lot of your own identity to pushing things forward in the way that you want it to move. And I think the value of doing something versus just kind of letting it happen and experiencing that change is you get to understand your ability to influence any environment. And I think that's a knowing and a power that's just so impactful versus just living your life in the driver's seat and being like, well, you'll look back at 100 and be like, well, my life kind of took a right here and it kind of took a left here. Like, I don't really know why, versus someone looking back and being like, as the amazing Frank Sinatra says, I got to live my life my way. I was the decider, and there's a line in the song that I really, really like. I always like scream at the top of my lungs whenever I'm singing it. He says, shit. He says he got to experience himself as someone who says what he truly feels versus someone who says the words of someone who kneels. And I just
Mm.
think that differentiator
Oh, that's a
versus
bar.
so
That's a
far, that song
bar.
is so
That's a
amazing. Like,
bar. That's a bar.
and he's like, yeah, regrets. I had a few. He's like, but I still got to live my life my way. Like I got to be the one to
Mm.
decide. And I think that is in itself of value. Like I think that's in itself something that just that alone is already incredibly valuable. So that's, I think,
Mm.
something to add to that.
My way. That's a good song.
I did it. Dude, I fucking, that's, yeah, that's the song. I'm like, if I have any say, like if I have a couple seconds before I die, my phone is next to me, like I'm popping
You
that
put
shit
in
on,
that song?
and I fucking hope that's the dream. That's literally one of my goals. That is one of my end goals. Is that I listen to that song and I understand it better each time I listen to it because I'm
Mm.
actually doing it my way. Like and I've lived my life for so long as someone who kneels. I really think I have. Like I really, and I think each month, each year, I'm hopefully breaking off the I have to, I should, I'm being controlled by influences of society, people's wants, my insecurities, and I am genuinely moving in a direction that is in alignment with whatever deeper part of myself I feel most connected to. So this year, I think for me is a year of alignment and action. Like uh I think for so long I've known all the things to do. I've been able to talk about all the things I should be doing and talk about it in really, I don't know, succinct ways or whatever. But I think this year I want to look back and be like, I really did do it my way. So yeah.
Well said. If you had to think about something concrete, like a different action you're going to do, have you thought about? I guess that's what people do for what's it called? New Year's resolutions. But do you have any specific actions you're interested in doing this year?
Yes. So one particular one I've been thinking a lot about and trying to figure out how I'm going to do it is, so I think I'll even relate this to the cycle of loss and rebirth. I think I've mastered losing things, not mastered, but gotten really well at losing things, which is letting go. Um, last year I let go of, I think, two things that were really difficult for me, which was alcohol and brie. Um, some things I let go of better than others. But nonetheless, I did let them go, despite how well I did it. And those are probably two things that I feel like I felt like I couldn't let go of. And I got to experience myself as not having those things in my life. Now Bree's back. Hopefully alcohol doesn't come back. Um, and so, I spent so much time being like, oh, I'm cutting out masturbation. I'm cutting out drinking. I'm cutting out smoking. I'm cutting out this. I'm cutting out that. I'm cutting out sex. And I've done it. And I think I've gotten so much of the benefit of doing that. But I think now the really hard part is the birth. How do you master the birth? How do you master the bringing things in? How do you master the adding things? And so this year, when I do my February cleanse or whatever, like it's just going to be about adding stuff. Like that's really what I
Wow.
want to focus on. And so it's about the birth. And so one thing that I really want to add habit wise is I want to concretely, I want to wake up at 6 a.m. every day. That's one that I just want to try. Like I've never actually really been somebody who wakes up early. I've never got to experience that. I've never got to experience the whole like, shit, is my laptop time? No, it's not. Okay. I've never got to experience myself as someone who um is an early riser and rise and grinds and gets to see the sunrise and all that stuff. And like I don't know what'll come out of it. I don't know what won't, but I just want to see myself as someone who could add that. Another thing I want to add is I want to regularly do Muay Thai. Um, and I want to just regularly so it's like some concrete goals I have are exercise 4 to 5 days, 4 to 6 days every week, meditate every day, and then wake up early. Those are some concrete things that I'm
Nice.
trying to add. And every week have at least one day where I full heartedly rest, which sounds
Mm-hmm.
contradictory, but where I genuinely rest. Um, so yeah, those are some concrete things that I think if I added, like I wouldn't be like, transformed at the end of the year, but shit, maybe I would.
Broken. You'd be broken.
Yeah, yeah. If I could, and if I could just master adding things in the way in which I've mastered cutting things out, like that's the real value. I think it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
being able to experience myself in that way. So it's a little hard given that I'm working two jobs. I don't really know how I could wake up at 6 because I'd have to go to sleep at like to get 8 hours. Like I actually really need 9 hours, but I'd have to go to sleep at like 10 or 11, which I get off work at like 10. So I don't know how that's gonna work, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. It would have to, yeah. You'd have to be like some 11 to 8:30 vibes, something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Eight
think Yeah, I think
or
the
nine
most
hours.
realistic might be 7. Like, if I could go to sleep at 11 and wake up at 7.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to do the six would be lit. So we'll see. But even 7, hey, I've never woken up
Yeah.
at 7. Honestly, I've
That's true.
never
I
even done
mean, like
that.
honestly, it would be hard if like because that way you could push your lab work early and then take a quick afternoon nap. Like I've heard a lot of people really praise the afternoon naps and early
Mm,
wake ups. Like maybe that's
mm.
something I'll try. But yeah, I haven't. I'm not really this year. I'm not thinking too hard about my sleep schedule. I don't think that was something on my plate, but I do need to eventually at some point. I think that's for me is going to be like the highest form of mastery. Like when I've done it, that's going to be the one that like pushes me to enlightenment. When I get my sleep schedule right, like it's
Bro, I've been a fiend about sleep, dude. Like I like I have my blue light blocking glasses that I put on at 10.
mm,
I'm getting my sunlight early in the morning every day. I'm putting on red light at 10. So I have the, shortest wavelengths going to my eyes. I'm doing like particular types of supplements, the magnesium L-threonate, theanine, apigenin at night. Like I'm like even trying to modulate it even more. Like I'm trying to figure out what more can I
mm,
do? Like, do I have to do the earplugs? Do I have to like get like the uh black whatever curtains, like the light blocking
mm,
curtains? Like, because that's just it seems like the one thing I'm encountering with all of these people. They're like, get your sleep
sleep.
right before you get anything else right. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, and for me, especially like, I think what we have in common as well is like that's more important if you don't drink coffee. Like if you're not drinking coffee, like you have to literally just have normal energy.
Yeah.
And that is what I've noticed is the times when I want coffee or when I'm not getting my sleep right. That's when I'm
Yeah,
like, oh shit, like I want to drink a coffee. So like
every time.
getting your sleep right is so important for that. And honestly, I feel more energized than people who do drink coffee when I'm getting my sleep right, to be honest. So that shit is, I think the sleep is like you gotta be a fiend about that. And then there's a lot of things you could do to make it better than not, I would say.
Yeah. Regular, I think the first place to start for me is just having even if I'm sleeping late, like at the very least do it at the same time every day. I don't even really be sleeping at the same time. Some days
It
I'll sleep
seems like
at,
from what the science says is waking up at the same time every day is most important.
oh, it's more important than sleeping at the same
Is more
time.
important than sleeping at the same time. Yeah, like sleep when
Ah,
you feel tired is good, like that's ideal, but waking up at the same time, and even on the weekends, like you don't want to wake up within a bigger, like you have like a 30-minute window of like 30 minute to an hour window of like, okay, I'm gonna get either more sleep or less sleep than this. But if once you go past an hour or 30 minutes, like you fucked up your circadian rhythm pretty hard to where you're gonna have to
ah,
like now recover from that. So like you can like, let's say you like want to sleep in, you shouldn't sleep in more than 30 minutes. And you shouldn't nap more than 30 minutes either during the day. Um, and that morning sunlight viewing is going to be the thing that literally sets your brain up to know that it's time to go to sleep at night.
oh,
That's the really massive thing. If you're not viewing the sun in the morning, your brain does not know it's morning. And it doesn't know to stop producing melatonin, and it doesn't know to start increasing dopamine and cortisol and all these other neurotransmitters to the extent at which you need it. Um,
cool. I didn't know
so
that.
those are huge.
Yeah, maybe this year I'll do better about that. Yeah,
Yeah, I
for
think if you
me,
just, yeah.
I think this year, um, I want to actually start in terms of creativity. I want to start actually coming up with my own ideas. I feel like 2022,
Mm,
I spent a lot of time learning from a lot of people,
mm,
but I never had the courage to go, this is my idea, this is my opinion, here it is. I
mm,
feel like, and I think that's a big question people ask. Well, you do all this thinking, what is the benefit? Great
mm,
question.
mm,
While it does impact the way I lead my life in many ways, I'm not presenting the ideas that I'm coming up with. And
mm,
yeah, it may not, the ideas I may not be brand new, they may not be world changing, but for people who may not be thinking about education all the time, I know I have some interesting things to say. You know, like
mm,
I know that for a fact because I spend every day thinking about it to some extent. And so this year I really want to put pen to paper and start voicing my opinions and ideas, and not only play a passive listener and learner student role.
mm.
And
Yeah,
so I think, that's something I really want to focus on, and put my own ideas, and stamp my kind of foot out there. So I'm excited to do that. Just write more, share more of my ideas.
but do you want to share those through like social media, like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or just like with the people you're encountering every day?
Just through, yeah, that's a good question. Just through LinkedIn and through, yeah, I just want to write more and then share it through that. And then,
Mm.
yeah, I don't really know what the whole reach situation is, how to reach people. That's an issue for 2024, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's phase three. Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah,
phase
yeah,
three for sure.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm honestly hyped. Even having this conversation, I'm very excited for 2023. It'll be cool to
Mm.
look back at this conversation again. I mean, I think this concept of life and death is something that if I can remember more and use that as a lens to perceive the world, that it would be cool.
Looks like we got a snatchy title already
Yeah.
appearing. And yeah, man, I'm really excited for this year too. I think that the way last year ended really set me up for what's hopefully going to be a good year. And got the news today that got the interview for KU for potentially moving into PhD. So who knows, man? I might be a PhD candidate come 2024. Which would be insane to think about. And I want to become the kind of person who it feels ready to be that by that time. And I feel like I'm really on the right path. It really feels like that. And to get all sappy and mushy, I feel like one of the there's a lot of things that's defined my life last year, but I feel like honestly us getting closer and us like developing a deeper friendship and bond, just sort of all the wisdom that I feel like I've learned from you this year, and all the encouragement and support that you've given me, I feel like has definitely been one of the pivotal sort of defining parts of 2022. So yeah, I feel ready to really dive into 2023.
The words of affirmation hit different.
It's true,
No,
man.
but
It's really true.
no, it's cool. I mean, other people don't know, but we record these conversations, but we have a conversation like this every day. Like that is
Right,
not
right, right,
recorded. Like
right, right.
these are the one out of we've recorded 10 or 11 so far, but we have one literally every day. So it's pretty cool that we can keep them coming.
Yeah, the most heat ones don't even get recorded, which is
Yeah,
the funny part. These are probably like mid-level,
yeah.
like conversations. Sometimes it's just randomly call you at 4 p.m. We'll just have that fucking heat
Yeah,
conversation.
but
But yeah,
yeah.
man.
Well, thank you so much for listening. Two birds chattering away.
Ah!
2023. Uh, thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next month for sure.
Next month for sure, with more exciting details to come.
Bye. Stop re